This Week in Radio Tech, episode 211, is brought to you by the Axia X switch, the world's first Ethernet switch designed expressly for use in broadcast IP audio networks. On the web at axiaaudio.com/xswitch. As a regional director of engineering for Cumulus, Robert Combs is one of the few go-to guys when a world-class studio is going together or a new technology is being tested in the field. We're talking with Robert about engineering management of a region of radio stations and how newer IP audio technology streamlines today's radio studio demands. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's time for the show. This is the show where we talk about radio technology, typically audio, but everything that has to do with radio broadcasting, including RF technology, towers, antennas, transmitters, audio mixing, how to really treat audio well, audio processing, how to get phone callers on the air, just all these kinds of subjects, plus the whole new world of streaming and internet and what that means to radio. So this is the show where we talk about that. We've got a great show today because we have one of my favorite people in the world on the show. And I didn't know this guy very well, but he until a few months ago. And now he's on the show, and I'll bring him on in a few minutes. It's Robert Combs with Cumulus Media, and I want you to meet him, so hang on. But right now, let's introduce the best-dressed engineer in radio. Ladies and gentlemen, from Manhattan, New York, it's Chris TOBIN. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Kirk. Hello, everyone. Yes, it's going to be a fun time. IP, streaming, and everything that's going on, technology is just advancing so quickly. I'm having a good time with it. I hope you are, too.
Hey, Chris, Ben, just a second. Tell us, your title says IP-SOLUTIONIST. Ooh, that's a big word. What does that mean?
I have a company. I branched out on my own recently to start imparting my knowledge on others for a price. And the company is Content Creator Solutions, basically IP codecs. And I thought best, in the last 5 to 6 years, I've been doing a lot of work with radio stations and some TV, as well as non-broadcast folks doing a lot of IP work. And I discovered that a lot of the things I've done over the years, as you have, Kirk, with working at radio transmitters and studios and know that stuff inside and out, that I've been able to actually offer to those who have less understanding a way of getting their content on the air, on the net, or over the radio. And I just started doing it myself. So IP-SOLUTIONIST seems to be the easiest way to get the conversation started. I could use the word technologist, but I think everybody's doing that these days. I'm more about providing a solution. So it's like someone comes up to me and says, I got this thing I need to do, and someone sold me this box. It's called a zip codec. Do you know what it's about? I had just had a phone call recently about it, and I said, yeah, sure. I don't know how it works, but I was given this to use for a talk show. Okay, great. Let's work it out. That's what I do for a short example. And I do the same thing with wireless IP radio links at 5.8 gig. I've done some 24 gig installs, and so that kind of thing. It's fun.
You must be so busy that you don't have a website yet.
The website I don't have, one reason is I'm not sure how to present the website because there's so many things I'm doing. So I've left it. Yeah, I know a lot of people ask, you have a website, what's that about? I'm like, well, call me, we'll talk. I get more done talking on the phone. I just recently worked with a guy, he called from, where was it? Canary Islands. Thank goodness he spoke English. And he was installing a IP link using a product from Italy. And he goes, are you familiar with this? I said, no, but I think I know what you're trying to do. So we talked a little. I looked up on the product's website, found out what it was. It was a basic IP radio, nothing fancy. And within 30 minutes, we were able to get things up and running. Could a website tell him that? No. What are you going to do? He's going to call me anyway. So
yeah. That just seems so right, Chris. Actually, I know your personality fairly well. You don't need what we don't need those thinking website. You got all.
Well, it just doesn't, for the purposes I'm trying to do. I mean, yeah, some people say you don't have a website, you can't do business. I'm like, really? My business isn't based on web traffic, so it's very different.
Yeah. It's very one-on-one. One-on-one indeed. Hey, so our show is brought to you by Axia and the Axia X switch. I'll be showing that to you in just a few minutes. But right now, let's bring in our guest. I'm just delighted to have Robert Combs on the show. I'm glad he could make it today. Robert, hey, good afternoon. How you doing, buddy?
Good afternoon, Kirk. Glad to be here.
Man, you've got some pipes. You've been on the air?
I started out on the air many years ago.
Well, like I did. And then you decided that you couldn't make enough money to raise a family being on the air.
Well, the engineer walked in one day on the 15th of April and was very excited that he had only had to pay so much more in taxes. And that was $5,000 more than I made that year. And I started school the next semester.
So you got formal education in engineering then. So you actually do
Well,
know
I
what you're doing.
had tech school. I did electronics technology in tech school and learned the basics of electronics. And then everything else, like most things in life, is on the job training.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Robert, you are the regional director of engineering for Cumulus, and you work out of Savannah, Georgia. What a beautiful part of the world. You're lucky to live there.
I am very lucky. I've been here 15 years. And besides the sand gnats trying to eat me up, I love it.
I've heard of these sand gnats. I've never experienced them, though. I'd rather not. Do I have to stay away from Savannah?
No. But imagine a flea or a gnat that bites.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
pretty much what a sand gnat is.
So Robert, you and I'd heard your name before, and maybe run into you here or there, but I certainly became familiar with your work when you came to Nashville several times doing work at Cumulus at this new Nash facility where Cumulus runs their country music programming out of. And you were involved in building a couple of studios, but the first one was a really impressive morning show studio for Blair Garner and his now nationwide syndicated morning show. Why don't you talk to us about that, how that project got started and how you got involved?
Well, I'm very lucky that Cumulus and Gary Klein allow me to travel and build studios. I had went up and helped Mark, our engineer that was in Atlanta at the time, to build the news talk studios for 106.7 when Cumulus and Citadel merged. So Mark liked the work I did helping him up there. So Mark was in charge of building the Nash studios. And so he called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing for the next month?" And I said, "Well, I guess you're going to tell me." And so, yeah, I was able to, get plenty of time to learn some of the new technology. And to, they gave me a room and said, "Here, wire this one."
So was this your first big experience with audio over IP?
Well, I have audio over IP in Savannah, but it's a few years older than some of the new X nodes and the mixers and the X engines and things like that. So I had the basic knowledge of the old Axia nodes. But this was my first venture into the consoles and the VX system and all the other stuff. So I've installed some other brands of audio over IP, but this was the first one where everything, there was no big trunk cables. It was nothing but Cat 5. So.
Yeah. Well, you guys did do some breaking out to punch blocks. I guess a lot of that was GPIO though, wasn't it?
Right. GPIO. And there was we had the Chrome blocks for the, we sent audio into the engine through, we went to a Chrome block first. And then went into the engine, so that there was a point where if we needed to make a change, we could make it right there on the block. So.
Yeah. And some people do that when they're wiring audio over IP systems, whether it's an Axia system or a WheatNet system. Some people go through an intermediate thing like a Chrome block, or some people still actually go through a patch bay, or not. You don't have to. So, I guess I'm curious. So, you've certainly spent some years wiring traditional studios, not audio over IP, but traditional point-to-point wiring, right?
Actually, some of my first work in engineering was on weekends. I would go in with the Clyde Scott, who was a contract engineer for the station I worked for, and I would go in with him to build studios on my weekends off, and that's where I got my start. Just traveling all over South Georgia, building studios.
Why are us engineers like that? Why do we give up our free time to go build studios?
Isn't that amazing? Love it. My girlfriend gets very mad at me because she'll have plans for Saturday and ask me, can we do this, and I say, I've got this I've got to do. I've got this. And she gets upset.
I hear you. I hear you. So for some years you built traditional studios, just as I did. Chris Tobin's with us, just as Chris Tobin did. Built plenty of traditional studios. What for you? What was the biggest mind bender? What was the biggest adjustment in in building studios with this newer technology, audio over IP?
Well, the biggest change to me was, I'm used to bringing in the big trunk cables, 32 pair, 27 pair, depending on what brand you bring in, and just spending days and days punching down regular audio cable off those trunks and then feeding, patching everything through. With this, I pull the ceiling tile back, run one Cat5 from one room to the other, and the rooms are connected, which I love because I hate insulation.
When this, a few months ago, we had Gary Klein on the show, and we did a little video walking tour through, through the whole place at the new Nash facility, and we're going to go back and do another tour through there, a video tour, and we're also going to do this show from the Nash facility. I can't wait to do that. We're just waiting to to get around to getting me over there and doing it. My point is, we've shown some pictures of the hallways and the rooms, but we haven't gotten around to actually showing the studios and some of the wiring techniques that went on to build this place. The first studio that you built, the one for Blair Garner. Now, this is under Mark Lamuth's direction, and you were certainly involved with wiring it and testing things out. This is a rather high profile and somewhat complicated studio, wouldn't you say?
Very, because of all the cameras involved. I mean, there's 5 HD video cameras that are voice controlled, so that they switch to whoever is talking on a microphone, so that there's whoever's talking is always on screen, always on camera. And we had to integrate everything with that. We worked a great company, I believe it's Clare Brothers, did the lighting and worked it in with our sound. And, we learned how to control both and get everything wired together. And it was, everything Cat5 going, everything from the cameras to the GPIOs, the controls. They can control everything from each microphone for their own personal settings, from the stand and the stage in the actual studio, and then everything can also be controlled in the master control room. And everybody has their own computer screen that they control separately. But we had to, make the furniture work to where that was not on camera, so it wasn't blocking their face. It was a lot of things that I had never been involved with. And when it comes to a studio, I'm used to just building, it's audio only, you don't even have to do your hair before you show up. And here we had to do a dressing room. So.
Yeah. Hey, I want to bring Chris Tobin in just a second, but one thing that came to mind, you mentioned, so the monitors are not blocking their face, because you will be doing television out of this room. I'm not sure if you're streaming it yet, but you will be. And everybody's going to wear makeup. It's everybody's going to look great for this morning show with Blair Garner. But I've shown people pictures of your studio there, and they all comment on these mic arms that you found and installed there. They're low. They don't go up overhead and back down like ours do. The one that you're using, the one that I'm using. These actually come out low and go across the front of the monitor or just off to the side of it, and then hold the microphone up. What are those mic arms?
You would ask me that, and I'm not sure the name brand, but we ordered them through a Broadcaster General Store. And, those guys down there are great at helping us when we go to them and say, we need to be able to do this, and they say, well, here, try this, or let's look at this. Carrie and Dave and Jessica and all those people down there, everybody just are just great. Anytime we have a studio build out that we're trying new ideas, they give us all kind of great ideas as well.
Huh. So, hey, Chris Tobin, you were involved in a build out of a station a few years ago, and it was, I guess, a new audio over IP installation. What did you discover? And kind of compare notes with Robert here. What did you discover wiring this new place? Back when it was Winds.
Yeah. Well, as Robert pointed out, we're all accustomed to the multi-pair cables, and so large cables, thick stuff, and all kinds of messy, heavy wiring. And I will say that, as I've told many folks in the past, when we wired up the Win Studios for the Axia system back in the day, I pretty much clear the slate, threw everything off the table and started fresh and said, okay, what if? What if I didn't have 25 pair cable? What if I didn't have Belden 8451 or 8732? How can I make this work? And I just took the approach of the Cat5 cable, twisted pair. Steve Lampin, as we all know from Belden, has made it quite clear that twisted pair cable, if properly terminated, can do a lot. So I applied that thinking, and we built a facility of, eight studios, all wired with Cat5, or actually I think, yeah, it was Cat5, Cat5e. And we did everything on it, from the Axia protocols to just plain old analog audio, dial tone for telephone. We did everything. And I used patch bays, Cat5 patch bays on certain paths, basically the lines coming in for the remotes from the outside sources. Internally, it was point-to-point to the switches and to the necessary nodes and consoles. But for outside sources coming in and out where, you always wind up having to patch something, we put them through a patch bay, Cat5 patch bay. We did one or two Chrome block arrangements because you can patch around Chrome blocks. That was for the telephone company folks. They were insistent that they had their traditional looking block on the wall, so we did that. Outside of that, I have to agree with Robert. There's a lot of stuff that's just, boy, it's so much easier to do and plan out and reliable. And I think sometimes you overlook the ease of use in the new systems, whether it be an Axia, WheatNet, or Dante installation, Lavo, or anyone else. You really have to just have an open mind. I mean, your imagination is the key.
So, Robert, you wired this first studio for the morning show, America's Morning Show, with Blair Garner and a cast of characters, and that was a complicated studio. You had a television set to build as well, with a raised floor. Not for, well, I guess cables do go under it, but the floor was raised to make it more appropriate for television. And then there's a studio audience area and all that. Again, we'll show that on a future show, but then you added a second studio a few months later, the studio that's now for the Nash Nights show. And I checked in with Zach, your partner in crime there, Zach Harper, and he verified that yeah, there's other things that are wired, but essentially, all the phones and the audio connecting from the new Nash Night studio back to the rest of the system, it's through one Cat5 cable. Is that
yes.
right?
Yes, we ran some multi-pair Cat5 cable through the ceiling into the building, mostly for GPIO and things like that, and spares. But yeah, everything else, the microphones, the VX, the X nodes that are in there, it's all one Cat5 cable going into the rack room, plugging into one Axia machine, and everything runs out of it. And then we have a small production room that we built at the same time right beside it, and one Cat5 cable in there as well.
Wow. So that's so different. I mean, boy, when I was building studios before Axia came along, yeah, we'd spend days up in the ceiling pulling these multi-pair cables and wringing them out and trying to find which pair was which. What a mess. By the way, PT in the chat room, and I looked up separately also, the mic arms we were talking about are from studioitems.com. Studioitems.com. And indeed, as you mentioned, BGS carries those. They're really cool. If you need a low profile, I'd like to get one for here and not have this thing go overhead. Just need to come up with the almost $300 that they cost.
Well, the good thing about that too is you can have it very low profile or medium profile. I believe you can actually put it up overhead if you want to, but like I said, with today's studios, being able to see monitors, or if you have cameras like we had, they're very good.
Yeah, sounds like it. So, Robert, in the second studio that you built, the one that's for the Nash Nights show, what did you do differently, if anything, now that you had all that experience with audio over IP with the America's Morning Show studio? Did you do anything differently for the next studios?
Well, not really. The only difference between those studios were, of course, we didn't have the big stage. We didn't have the second console or table to put together. It was basically a studio all encompassed into one thing. We ran the punch blocks the same way, did the GPIOs, and hooked everything internally inside that one studio. And then we just decided, okay, we've got 7 monitors we've got to put up here. We've got 6 microphones. Let's lay it out. And I mean, we did it a lot quicker. I was only there 2.5 weeks for that build, but I had to come back home to take care of some stuff in Savannah. And Yancey and Mark and and Martin and JT came in and finished the rest of the studio for us. So yeah, we were ready for it, having already done Blair Studio, but it was a lot quicker and actually a lot easier. So
and
we brought in some other folks on that one too. Keith out of Detroit and Trey out of Florence, and brought in guys from all over to help us.
And you also had a lot of the infrastructure already done. So when you built the America's Morning Show studio, at that time you had to put in the phone system. It was a Telos VX phone system, which is also running audio over IP. So that was already in. I guess when you put in the Nash Night studio, you simply had to add some phone numbers to it and expand it slightly, but the infrastructure was basically there. Right.
Zach did more work, I think, on the Sean Pard's Nash Night studio than we did. I mean, we did the physical labor and punched down the wires and ran all the mic cables and got in the ceiling. But Zach, being the head of IT, a lot of it was him, because he just had to set up the new the IP addresses and hook in the phone system and set up the OpEx system for it, and that was it.
Zach may be the guy to ask, but you just mentioned setting up the IP addresses. And this is, hey, when we were building studios 10, 15 years ago, an IP address never came up. Okay, maybe you had one computer in the control room. But nowadays, it seems like planning your IP address scheme is a fairly important thing to do, getting them written down or documented somewhere so you know where everything is. That's new.
Well, the biggest thing was, used to, when you build a studio, you had a whole notebook of paperwork, tracing where this wire went. Now it's, I think when Mark said, here, I want you to go build these studios, he sent me 9 pieces of paper. 5 of those pieces of paper were IT. 4 were layouts of Chrome blocks. So yeah, it's very different now. And, if you, Terry Bond taught me years ago, if you don't learn and keep progressing with new technology, you're going to be stuck. And so that's what we've been doing. And Zach, like I said, Zach really controlled the whole build because he was IT.
Chris, when you've been planning a studio, or you help somebody with a studio now, what did you have a scheme for the IP addressing? Is this important? Is it important to keep it all straight? Does it matter a lot?
Absolutely. In a couple of locations, I've worked with some folks. What I did on one of the systems I recently worked on, I'm a fan of non-routable IP addresses when you're doing an internal network, say like a studio setup. And the reason I've gone that route on many occasions is that avoids the infamous somebody plugging something into the network that might be bridging to another network that is routable, and all of a sudden you've got traffic finding its way back and forth. That's one. 2, there's less chance of somebody bringing in a device that may default to the infamous, 192.168.1.1 stuff that everybody uses by default. So that helps. And then as far as just laying out, I try to keep, say, a group of IP addresses strictly for the routers, for the switches, and that's a group. Just come up with a range, say maybe 100 IP addresses. Say this will always be this part of the infrastructure. And then either in one place we did studios, each studio had its own IP range. And I know some people say that's crazy, you shouldn't have to do that, or why bother? Believe it or not, when you're running around trying to troubleshoot and you know your infrastructure properly, you look at the IP address, you know right away, oh, that's Studio 12 or that's Studio 2, and you know where they're going. It's helped a lot. And but I find that the trick is understanding the proper routable IPs and which way to go with that, and also making sure they do everything in a static world. But do it with reservations, so you don't have to go crazy trying to type in crazy static IPs and figuring out what's what. So I've done DHCP, make it static reservation, and then just run from there, and it's worked really well.
Robert, was that anything like your scheme? Was it? You got a big facility there with a whole rack room, a lot of computers. You guys remote or KVM, a whole bunch of automation computers and other ones, and then you've got the America's Morning Show and the National Night Studios. You'd have an IP addressing scheme in there.
We had, I think, 2 pages of IP addresses alone, just designated. And it's like Chris said, you designate this group is OpX, this group is Axia, this group of numbers would be Kix Brooks Studios, this group of number would be Sean, and this group of number would be Blair Studio. So you keep everything separate so that when an IP address comes up, one quick glance tells you exactly where it is and where you need to go.
I forgot about the Kix Brooks Studio. That is a gorgeous studio. It's designed to be very comfortable. We'll get a video tour in there as well on our next time that we're there. But now it's not an AOIP studio per se, although I think there may be a node in there to tie it back with the rest of the system. It's more of a recording studio with a recording studio console. Isn't that right?
That is right. You have a setup where you can record just a mixing console, really, is in set up in the booth, and then mics everywhere for the couch, for the easy chairs, for the desktop, cameras for everything now. I mean, the Clare brothers just went in, redid the whole lighting and cameras in that studio as well. And that was the first studio built, and it was made for recording, not for broadcast.
A couple of times you've mentioned Clare brothers, and I got to meet some of these engineers while they were in town doing the wiring. And tell me, how do you, or what's the reason that you would hire a company like Clare brothers to do this infrastructure wiring, maybe some structured cabling? Why don't you and the Cumulus engineers do that themselves? What's the advantage?
Well, the Clare brothers were mostly for video. And they, a lot of folks may know the Clare brothers. They do lighting and sound for a lot of concert tours. Some of the big name, Bruce Springsteen. I think they did Garth Brooks' last tour. Most of their guys are sound guys and light guys, and so and when it came time to do TV cameras, we know audio. The Cumulus guys, we're radio broadcast engineers. We're not video. We're not, a lot of different things. We've learned it now, thanks to some of those guys that we worked with. But when it came time to put cameras in, put lights in, Cumulus wanted the best. And so they went to, after over years talking to different tour people and lighting people, they said, if you want the best, this is where you go. And just so happens they're based out of Nashville. Yeah. So that helped a lot as well.
I was just checking their website. Their website is Clair Systems, CLAIR, clairsystems.com. And oh my goodness, they're also a manufacturer of speaker systems. They do huge installations. I didn't realize. I got to go see this Franklin Theater down the road in Franklin, Tennessee. They did a gorgeous movie, or maybe an acting theater. I'm not sure which it is. A huge church in South Korea, and just lots of other things. It's just amazing. All right.
And their guys do run sound at the Ryman and at Grand Ole Opry. And, I tried to get off work to go over to the Ryman. The guys were going to be doing a special show one Saturday afternoon. Of course, Mark wouldn't let me off. So I couldn't go over, but yeah, they're running sound. These guys. One guy would be there a week, and then he had to go on tour for 2 weeks with this artist, and then he'd come back, and somebody had to go on tour with this artist. So,
wow. Hey, we are in the middle of talking with Robert Combs, who's the regional engineering manager for Cumulus Media. He's based out of Savannah, Georgia. You're on the show here with KIRK, HARNACK, and my co-host, Chris Tobin. We're talking about some of the things that Robert does, and like many broadcast engineers, Robert is responsible for a lot of things. And after our break, we're going to talk to Robert a bit more about studio systems, but then also about how he manages other engineers in his regional area, how his work is covered while he's out of town doing some of these special projects. And I want to make sure that, Robert, we also get a chance to talk briefly about the Radio Row project that you've been involved with, broadcasting, providing a way for 30 radio stations to broadcast from a special event. That's been pretty cool. Our show is brought to you, this TWiRT 211, brought to you by Axia, and specifically the Axia X node. Unfortunately, I don't have it powered up right here, but this is an Axia X node. It's a half rack width box that, X node. This is the X switch. This is an Ethernet switch. Now, with Axia systems or any AOIP system, you do need to use proper Ethernet switches. And most of the time, folks will simply get a recommended switch, typically from Cisco, although there are some other switches that can work as well. But the characteristics of an Ethernet switch are really important for audio over IP to work properly, because it's got to be low latency. We can't have any delays in the switch. It's got to behave exactly right. And it also has to behave right for the purposes of multicast and the IGMP groups. And this also means the switch has to have the ability to shut off streams which are no longer being subscribed to in an IGMP multicast network. Well, the behavior of some switches is really pretty poor in that regard. It's overbearing and rather obtuse, and the Cisco switches do a great job of this. But not everyone wants to buy a Cisco switch, so the folks at Axia came up with the X switch. The X switch has gigabit ports on the back as well as 100 megabit ports. Let's see, how many does it have? It's got 2 gigabit ports, 2 SFP ports if you want to put fiber into there. And then it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 megabit ports for plugging in other items. It does have built-in power supply. Right over there, that side, backwards for me. Power supply there. And the switch can supply PoE to other devices. So if you need to plug in, let's say, an Axia X node, and you want it to have a backup power supply, well, an X node can be powered by 110 volts or 240, but it can also be powered by PoE, and that PoE can come from the Axia X switch. The X switch doesn't require really any further configuration than what it has when it comes out of the box. So you can give it an IP address on the front. But unlike other switches from, say, Cisco, where some configuration is required, and if you've done it before, it's no big hill to climb. If it's your first time to configure a Cisco switch, it can be a little bit daunting, although Axia has complete instructions on our website. But the X switch comes already configured. It's ready to go. And if there are a couple configuration choices, it's pretty much, do you want to make the gigabit port into a trunking port or an access port? And that's pretty standard IP or IT work, no matter where you go, trunk ports or access ports. It's about a $1,200 or $1,300 box. So you can find a Cisco switch that's qualified for a little bit less money if you like, or you can get the Axia X switch. We actually, do whichever you like. The Cisco switches work fine. So do, I believe there's an HP switch that works fine. But if you want to have something that matches, provides PoE, and is already configured, the Axia X switch is really a good way to go. I'll be plugging this in here in my network in just a little while. I've got a rack space right for it. Oh, and you can also put 2 of them side by side. They are rack mountable side by side, so you can bolt 2 of them together and put them both in a rack. Also, you don't have to rack mount them. You can lay this in the bottom of a cabinet if you need to. You can mount it up on the side of the cabinet. But we also provide the rack mounting ears for with every single one of them. You can rack mount just one or put them side by side with the rack mount ears that come with it. Check it out on the web at axiaaudio.com. It's the Axia X switch. It could make your installation even more convenient than it already is. All right, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode number 211. I'm KIRK Harnack, along with Chris Tobin in Manhattan and Robert Combs, live in Savannah, Georgia. Well, Robert, hey, I want to chat with you a few minutes about your role as a regional engineering manager. Now, most engineers are not regional engineering managers. So you probably have some responsibilities that a lot of engineers, including myself, are not really familiar with. And Managing other engineers obviously would be one of those things. I'm a little curious also about how you get your work covered when you're off in Nashville building a studio, or you're in Las Vegas with a red carpet event there. Who's manning the transmitters back in Savannah? How does that work?
Well, luckily, I've got some good friends and a good backup guy here in town. A couple of years ago, I was in need of an IT person to take care of the network while I was gone, because I had started traveling a lot more, and I was able to find a great guy named Ken Ferris that has done all kinds of IT and help desk support, and so he stepped into that, and come to find out he was very interested in learning the rest of the business. So over the past 2 years, I've been teaching him RF and studio stuff, along with the OpEx automation system that we have here. And also the other guys in town. I've found over the years that engineers, you have to back each other up, and we're the only ones in the city. You have to be a family, and so the other engineers in town, we cover for each other. There's a contract guy, and then there's someone that works for L&L Broadcasting, and Clear Channel is in town. They're in between engineers right now, but when they have one, we also get him involved. And if you need a break, if you need to go away for a weekend, or in my case, where I'm gone at least 2 weeks a month, sometimes longer, then we cover for off-air emergencies, transmitter stuff. And that way, and in the case of Marty, where he's a contract, anyone who actually has a signed contract, they get our services free of charge. If it's someone who is a pay-as-you-go customer of his, then we charge the same thing he would charge if they're off the air. But we have to. You have to cover for each other, and because everybody needs a break every now and then.
What are you finding out there in terms of engineering talent in the various markets that you manage? Some months ago we had Jeff Littlejohn from Clear Channel. He was recently honored by the NAB Engineer of the Year, or an engineering award from NAB. He's worried about engineering talent coming up. They have a program at Clear Channel to try to bring new engineers in. What is your view on that, and what's Cumulus able to do to try to bring more talent into the business if that's needed?
Oh, it's much needed. It's sad. At one time, I was the youngest engineer in the Cumulus family. And now at 46, I'm still one of the youngest, but I'm not the youngest anymore. But we've got some great guys in the Cumulus family that are younger and energetic and willing to learn. They understand that they still have a lot to learn, no matter how long they've been doing it. I have a young man in my region that he's been with us for 5 years, and every day we're teaching him something. And if he doesn't learn something new, he calls us and goes, "Okay, teach me something now." And we're looking for young engineers like that throughout the country. We've got some great engineers that have a lot of experience, and they would love to teach it. I have two. Like I said, I have the Ken here and Trey up in Florence that are ready to learn and want to learn, and that's the way I was taught. So I feel it's my responsibility to pass what guys over the years have taught me to somebody else, because this younger generation doesn't want to work. They don't want to work the hours that we work. They don't want to be on call 24/7. I love that. I guess it feeds my ego. I'm the only guy you can call at 2 a.m. when you're off the air. And if I don't get up and get the job done, you don't make any money. And to me, that's one of the best aspects of the job. I mean, I hate getting up at 2 a.m, or I hate, it interrupting a dinner date or family time, but it's part of the job, and it comes with it. You get your downtime. I mean, as long as you do your job right and fix your sites and keep them clean and keep everything well-oiled and preventive maintenance going, then you don't get called out at 2 o'clock unless there's a storm or something, happens. So
Would you would you rather equipment break at 2 in the morning or at 2 in the afternoon?
2 in the morning.
You'd rather it break at 2 in the morning.
I don't have backup transmitters here, except so if it's going to break, 2 in the afternoon, we're getting, $50, $60, $100 a spot.
Yeah.
2 in the morning, we're getting 5. So, but
Chris,
I worked in bars for 20 years. So I'm sort of the vampire lifestyle anyway from that.
Chris Tobin, what do you think about that? Would you rather a transmitter? In your market, you've got a lot of backups. Stations there.
In our market, yes, in New York City, you basically, it was drilled into your head, 5 nines reliability for systems uptime. So if you had a failure, you should be able to withstand it either during the day at peak sales commercial time or during the overnights. In other markets I've worked in, we didn't have the luxury of all of the necessary backups we'd like. So I would say I'd still probably prefer a 2 o'clock in the morning call rather than during the day. As Robert points out, the commercial rates are higher during the day, plus visibility is higher. Everybody's around, so less chance of you really staying focused because you got too many people over your shoulder asking when's it going to be fixed, when's it going to be fixed.
If a transmitter fails at 2 a.m., what has been interrupted for sure is your sleep. If a transmitter it fails at 2 p.m. and you got to take care of it right then, right there, there's no telling what you're involved in at that moment, and it's probably something important, whatever it is. And you've got to put that off while you go deal with something else, and with everybody breathing down your neck. So yeah, maybe there's some advantage to things failing at 2 a.m. I was just going to say though that maybe we should see if we can get manufacturers to make equipment, not break at all, not break at 2 a.m.
Well, see that the question is, would you prefer a 2 a.m. failure or a 2 p.m. daytime failure? My question would be, why would you even be considering a failure? I would be working towards systems reliability and find a way to prevent that. And then the choice of failure is not basically act of God or vandalism. And those two things, based on risk assessment, they don't happen often. So you have a better chance of sleeping more nights than not.
So a lot of those 2 a.m. failures are weather related, aren't they? Thunderstorms still going on at 2 a.m.
Usually thunderstorm or someone tapped into a power pole or something similar. So.
Somebody going home from that bar that you were managing and
that I used to, yes.
Yeah, running off the road. Yeah, I've had a few of those. So hey, let's talk about this red carpet event. So Robert, the last time I saw you was in Las Vegas just before the NAB, and you were involved with this big ACM Awards, the Academy of Country Music Awards, and this was huge. There were 30 radio stations there, and you and your colleagues provided a mixer, microphones, headphones, and a two-way connection back home for every single one of those stations. That's a miracle. Tell us about that.
Every one of those stations, plus all of the Nash country guys, each show from there was also involved. That's part of the new stuff that I'm learning that I really love to do, because not only do I get to go to Las Vegas and spend a week, although when I was there that time, the only time I left the MGM grounds was to go get some dinner about 2 blocks away one night because I was tired of eating in the hotel. But I get to go, I go to work, but I'm working in Las Vegas, one of the greatest cities on earth. So I enjoy that part. But we set up the 32 tables, I think total was what we had at the ACM Awards, with 28 to 30 radio stations from all over the country. Some doing live morning shows, which I believe the earliest was some folks out of Tampa that had to be set up and ready to go at 2 a.m. Las Vegas time. I drew the short straw for that one. So I got to get up at 1:30 and hook up an ISDN line. The East Coast guys came in, then the Central time, and then, as their time zones kicked in, their morning show started. yeah, I mean, everything's set up just like we're doing studios now. We have an X node sitting right there on the table with a headphone distribution amplifier, 4 microphones going into the X node, and then we have the iPad, which is what we have the mixer that one of the guys, Alex at BSI, wrote, and to actually control the switch or the mixer for from the Axia, and it's very simple, very easy to learn, and it keeps us from having a giant mixer, Mackie 1202 or 1204 right there in the way. Gives them more space to lay out their paperwork and to get a whole group of artists. As you saw, it may not be a single artist; it may be a whole group. So.
Yeah.
And of course, everything runs back to the back room where all the we do everything ISDN to the studios, and we'll use ISDN as long as we have it, and then we'll switch to IP. I'm sure, and we had I think 6 roll-around racks full of equipment in the back room.
I think you did, if I'm not mistaken, you did have some IP audio connectivity back to Dallas, to the Cumulus facility in Dallas, right?
Yes. Everything was uplinked. We sent everything to the Dallas facilities, and then they uplinked them. We actually had studio shows going during the actual event, the award show, and we were sending them audio via IP. And they were also talking with us. We had the walkie-talkie systems that were also into the Axia equipment, to where
that's
they
actually
could talk just to us.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask about this, because I took some pictures backstage there where you had all these 6 roll-around racks worth of gear, and on top are all these walkie-talkies. And I'm thinking, okay, is that just to talk there? And he said, no, we're actually sending walkie-talkie audio and I guess the digital PL code, the squawk, through an IP audio connection. I think it was through some Telos iPorts there in Las Vegas and some more iPorts in Dallas, and coming out there to another 2-way radio system in Dallas. So you could just, hit the talk button on the walkie-talkie and talk to somebody in Dallas. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. They we needed if they when we got on the red carpet, I would be taking care of one reporter, and through the wireless system, I was I was their only contact. So if Dallas needed something from them or needed them to not do something or to change something, then they would just go into my walkie-talkie in my ear and say, hey, tell Erica to do this, or tell Blair to do this, or not do this. So,
Wow. So do you expect that you're going to be involved with more of these red carpet events? Is this going to be a continuing deal?
Actually, I'm leaving next Tuesday to go back, Billboard Music Awards. We will have a radio row set up again, this time still 30 radio stations, just all different formats this time instead of just country. And then we'll be doing red carpet as well, and carrying the Billboard Music Awards on the air, getting everything set up for that.
Good gosh, that's a remote right there. Chris Tobin, did you guys have you seen their setup that Cumulus is doing for this red carpet and the radio row?
Yeah, I did. I got to see some pictures. I've done similar radio rows for when I worked at ABC Radio Networks and at the Westwood one. And what Robert says is true. It can get pretty daunting if you don't have everything organized just right. So yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Hey, Robert, I've asked you everything that I wanted to. Is there a subject that I've forgotten to cover here?
No, I mean you've pretty much spanned my whole career now, from the beginning to where I am.
Right now. Would you like to make a prediction about the future? What do you see coming up for you in the next year, or for broadcast engineers? What do you see for us guys?
Well, I think if we don't make some changes ourselves, that the engineers are going to get left behind. This has become a sales-oriented business, And if the engineers, we can get lost in that. And if the engineers don't start taking care of business and making sure, showing how valuable we are to the radio station, and get some younger people involved and get them taught and trained, we're going to be left behind.
Seems to me like one way that engineers can present more value to a general manager who often looks at an engineer as just this big expense that comes walking in, is to find revenue streams for a station using the technology that they have or technology that they could have. And back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, we tried to sell our subcarriers, and maybe that's still going on in New York City. My goodness, an analog subcarrier was worth a bunch of money every month. People want to get that for niche broadcasting. I was certainly involved with stations that were transmitting Q paging back when that was around, and that was helped offset the cost of engineering. Chris Tobin, what other technologies are around that can an engineer can bring to the table to show revenue?
Well, I think the first thing to do, and this is what I used to do in a couple of places, and it paid off. First thing you need to do is find a way to talk the proper language to sales and the general manager. Try to learn the normal English speak. And then second, take what technologies you do have and look at how they do their workflow. Like say, for instance, maybe try to attend a promotions meeting or marketing meeting for the station and listen and watch how they go about doing an event. So here's an example. I was I was part of a marketing event where we did a charity fundraising for toys from a school bus in a parking lot in a shopping mall. And the marketing department was talking, and I just sat in the meeting. I just was listening. I didn't contribute anything at that point in time. And somebody said, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have so-and-so live from there because he's a top-rated show, but it's out in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, and we don't know if that's possible, and it's 3 weeks away, blah, blah, blah. So I chimed in and said, there's an opportunity here. We can use the following technologies. It was a wireless IP radio link. I said, we can make this, and happen, and since we have relationships with one of the other broadcasters nearby, maybe we can make a deal. Of course, everyone in the room was like, what? We could do what? So I got working on that, and sure enough, I was made it happen. At the end of that event, which was a 2-week event from a school bus in a parking lot, over 10,000 toys were raised. 2 newspapers, 1 TV station covered the event. Radio station got the highest profile it had in some time for the event during the holidays. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, I was then invited on a regular basis back to the marketing meetings, and all of a sudden, many new things were starting to come our way. And a record label asked if they would want to do an interview with an artist in Times Square. We can have it for you by day after tomorrow. If you're interested, let us know. Of course, the programming folks were like, can we do something live from Times Square in 2 days? I'm like, I think we can. We could try. We have a few toys up our sleeve. And all of a sudden, but see, here's the key. I was creating revenue opportunities because now programming can go back to sales and say, hey, I've got Britney Spears coming to Times Square for her big event. We're the only radio station that will be live backstage, and you can get 2 sponsorships. Who's got somebody available? So we went from just an event that they would be there with a cell phone, say, hey, we're in the back, blah, 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 to now it's a sponsored event, studio quality, and we look like we're the kings of the road. So what's that?
I was going to say, you described a great scenario there. How do you then get, or how do you prevent engineering from getting taken for granted on future opportunities? Maybe this becomes de rigueur, which it should be. I mean, that's engineering is there to support sales and making technically things happen. How do you avoid the complacency though, or maybe just the feeling that when engineering says no, we can't do it from there. That's not going to be possible. How do you avoid that situation?
Well, here's what you need to do. In the engineering department, the engineering person, the technician, whatever you want to call yourself, first have to know the strengths and weaknesses of your marketplace, your technology you have at your disposal, and also the limitations of the technology you're trying to apply. And the other thing you have to learn to do is never say the word no in a conversation. I learned this a long, long time ago from a guy by the name of Bob Donnelly. He was the senior VP of engineering for a radio network. And the one thing he never told Bob was no. What you would say to Bob was, hey, you know what? I know what you're trying to accomplish. I think I have an answer. Can you give me an hour and I'll get back to you? And he'd be more than happy and willing to accept that. If you said no immediately, well, that was a very bad day for you. So what I would do is when I was working with the sales and marketing folks and programming, and they would say, hey, can we do X, Y, Z from such and such location in 4 days? I would say, well, that is a daunting task. I think we have what it takes to do it. I need about 2 hours to map out a plan. Can you give me 2 hours and I'll get back to you? I guarantee you, if you come back to them in 2 hours and tell them no with a reason why, and it's really proper, in their language again, remember, don't talk techie, talk normal English to the adults, you will find that you won't be taken for granted and run into a situation where, oh, engineering's going to say no, forget it, don't bother. It will work. You need to step up and practice some people skills and things of that sort. And it'll work. Trust me. You can make it happen. And once you start doing that, as Robert pointed out, you'll no longer be the extinct species. You'll be something of an asset. Even though you're still considered an expense at some point, they will look at you in a different light, and it will pay off.
Robert, how does that advice ring with you? Does that resonate?
Oh, that's exactly what you have to do. And the big thing that when I came to work for Cumulus years ago was, I was involved. I was management. I was asked questions. Of course, we still got we need an ISDN set up at this place in 2 days. Well, guys, the phone company requires at least 10. Sorry. But if you'll give me 2 weeks notice, at least I can get this taken care of. One of the things I had to learn over the years, and I've learned it with age, is not to say no right away. Stop and think about it. See if there's a way that it can be worked out. I mean, if they tell you 5 minutes before it's got to happen, then it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. But if you give me enough time, and after a while, they start figuring out that if they give you enough time, you might can figure something out. But you've got to be able to work. You can't talk about capacitors and this and that. In engineering speak, you have to, like you said, be able to speak their language. One of the things I just took an SBE course from the SBE University talking about about how management looks at money and the credit cards and yeah, you've got a budget, but what do you need to spend and how can you work it to where you save a little money while you're getting all the money you need and everything. So, I mean, there's so much education you can do, you can learn from, and you can take classes and courses. And, if you're the guy that just sat in the corner with the suspenders and the pocket protector waiting for something to break, those days are gone. You've got to show them that you're active and you're at the tower sites and you're everything looks good and everything's clean, and you've got to show them that you're a major part of the staff, and without you, they're going to have problems. Otherwise, they'll say, "Well, we can do it without you."
Yeah, here's an example I could give you of a simple speak. What I used to do with a lot of folks in the office when they would ask they have computer questions, and the classic the computer issue we always run into as engineers at a radio station is the infamous hard drive is overloaded, full. It's got 1 gig of capacity left after 200 terabytes have been used up. So it's not uncommon. So I would explain to the person. I said, well, they said, well, I don't understand this thing with the hard drive. Somebody said I don't have enough RAM on my computer. What does that mean? So I would say, well, here's an example. Here's how we can understand better. You have a desktop, right? You're sitting at your desk. Yes. How does it look on the desk? Well, it's very cluttered right now. So it is. Now, if you want to get to the bottom of that stack of paper, how do you do it? And they shuffle things around. I said, see, that's what the computer does with its RAM. See, the less RAM you have, the less space you have to work with. It takes longer to get to the bottom of that pile. They look at you like, oh. I said, now look at that file cabinet behind you. Yeah. Now I noticed there's some paper sticking out of it. Oh, of course, I pulled the papers out to make an effect. And they said, well, yeah, it's kind of full. I said, see, that's your hard drive. Each one of those drawers is a directory on your hard drive. Once you get to capacity, what happens? Well, I said, go ahead, open that bottom drawer. Yeah, notice you have difficulty opening it. Think of your computer trying to get to that directory. It's full. That's where your problem runs into. That's why you need to back up. What was your backup? She goes, well, I don't know what the backup is. I said, well, you got a couple of those paper boxes behind you. What are those file store boxes? She goes, yeah, that's your backup. Now, when you want to go to that, what do? You go also over there. It's a different drive. Oh, I kid you not. After I did that little doodad, I got the best compliments from people in that sales office. Those sales assistants did anything I needed. They were more than happy to help out. Anytime they had an issue and IT said they can't be done, they said, well, that's okay. We'll call engineering. They'll help us. That's the approach you need to take. I'm telling you, you do it, it works. Now, did you not understand what I just explained to you about RAM and hard drive capacity without using the technical terms, bytes and bits?
And analogies work so well, especially analogies that are right there at hand. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I've used it for years, and it's paid off swimmingly.
Listen, we're at the end of our time here. We got to go. I want to thank Robert Combs, the Regional Director of Engineering for Cumulus out of Savannah, Georgia, for being with us. Robert, thank you for being with us. You can join us anytime. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Kirk.
Well, it's been good, and I hope to see you again at another red carpet event, something fun. Not a repair,
I'm told I'll be in Nashville again soon. So.
Oh, they're building another studio, aren't they?
I haven't been told what I'd be doing. I just been told I'll be in Nashville again soon. I usually find out when I get there. Here's your paperwork. Go ahead.
Need to know basis. I hear you. Chris Tobin, the best dressed engineer in radio. Thank you for being with us and your solid advice. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. It's it's worked. It's kept me out of trouble sometimes. So it works great.
Now, Chris, if somebody wanted to find you, you don't have a website. You have all the business you want, but just in case somebody wanted to hand you some money to solve a problem, is there a way to get hold of you?
Yes, there is. I don't have all the business I want. Nobody can. That's not true. Okay. The best way to reach me is at support@ipcodex.com. It's real easy to remember. You're talking IP, it's a codec, IP codex. So it's support@ipcodex.com, and I will definitely get the email. If I don't, one of the other guys will, and we'll help solve a problem. If we can't solve it, we'll find somebody who can for you.
Good deal. Support@ipcodex.com for Chris Tobin and his company, Content Creator Solutions. I'm Kirk Harnack at the Telos Alliance. They're my employer, and I thank them very much for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Today's show brought to you by the Axia X Switch. It's a really fantastic Ethernet switch in a box that's already configured for audio over IP. All right. Hey, coming up on future episodes, we've got the one, the only Vinny Lopez. If you don't know him, then you can't love him yet. He's going to be with us in a few weeks on This Week in Radio Tech. Thanks a lot to Andrew Zarian for letting us be on his network. And thanks to Suncast for producing and switching today's show, This Week in Radio Tech. That's it for us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.